Hello, it's Janna. My piece is the Nkisi Nkondi, or power figure. I'm sorry if I said that wrong, by the way. It is from the culture of the people of Congo at the end of the 19th century. It is made of wood and metal. As you can see on this map, the people of Congo lived in a region along the Atlantic coast of Africa, sub-Saharan, close to the modern boundary of the current Democratic Republic of the Congo. It did, however, extend slightly into the modern boundaries of neighboring countries. By the end of the 1900s, the population of Congo was roughly 10.2 million. Their religion was based on ancestral and spiritual cults. These also related to political and social organizations. This tie between religious and political power is something that often extends across cultures. For example, the use of religion by European kings to strengthen their rule over their subjects by relating themselves to God, or even Roman emperors' association of their own lineage with that of the gods. The people of Congo use power figures, such as this piece, to serve as magical charms which aim to cure illnesses. These illnesses were not restricted to being only physical. They could be social, spiritual, or emotional. During the end of the 19th century and into the beginning of the 20th century, European colonizers viewed these Nkisi as objects of resistance against their colonization. They often either coerced them away from their communities or simply stole them, sometimes even destroying them. Some were not destroyed, and eventually made their way into museums. Military leaders sometimes seized them as a means through which they could crush local power. In modern times, the underlying beliefs that fueled the use of the Nkisi are still held, but the objects themselves are no longer in use. This figure in particular was made in the late 1800s from wood and metal. It is distinctly human, and has an alert pose. This alert pose is indicated through posture and gesture of the figure. The body leans forward and the hands are placed on the hips. It has broad, open eyes. It also has sharp spikes that are driven into it, and has a protruding stomach region, meant to hold different sorts of medicines, often herbal. The figure's position is meant to emulate fearless challenge. Rather than cower away or be hunched over, this figure is alert and powerful, ready to confront opposition. The spikes driven into the figure represented a variety of different sorts of social contracts, whether they be vows, promises, treaties, or efforts against evil. The severity of the reason for each spike is reflected in its material. A peg could represent a simple social matter being settled, while a deep nail could represent crime, such as murder. Many statues of this type would have a reflective surface on the stomach region, meant to shield the medicines inside. This reflective surface would be symbolic of an other world that the Congo people believed in, inhabited by the spirits of their dead. It served as a sort of magical charm. It was activated by chants, prayers, and sacred substances that were used to cure illnesses. It is important to note that the figure is only activated once the medicines are placed into it. It is otherwise rendered powerless. This figure is the product of efforts from both ritual specialists and sculptors. The specialists actually used the figures, but the sculptors created them. One interesting functional attribute of this figure is the nature of how spikes were put into it. Before their insertion, spikes would be licked by opposing parties. If anyone was to break their oath, the figure would be activated, whether it be to enact protection or destruction. This figure is one example of a power figure. These fall under a broader category of objects called Minkisi, or Nkisi in singular. Again, I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, that the people of Congo used to hold sacred substances. These objects were available to people of all classes. In the image on the bottom, there's another type of power figure, This one is in the form of a dog. While wild animals were associated with the dead, the Congo people domesticated dogs and used them as hunting partners. Their ability to move between villages and forests led to the belief that dogs mediated between the worlds of the living and the dead, just as they moved between villages and forests. The two heads on the sculpture in particular made it especially effective. Other power figures show similar themes of power and religion, or spirituality. They all vary slightly in appearance. Some have more spikes to show more disputes, and some have more symbols of power, such as a crown, placed onto them. Overall, the appearance of a power figure can provide important information as to its value, level of power, and intention. There are also pieces from other cultures which can be compared to the power figure. The statues of votive figures from Sumerian culture differ in material, for example, because the votive figures are made of gypsum and inlaid with shell and black limestone, while the power figure is made of metal and wood. But they share a purpose relating to spiritual communication and a form that is inspired by humans. The Röntgen Pieta, I'm sorry, I don't remember how to say that correctly, also shares a religious function. It is from medieval Europe and is made of wood like the power figure. This piece was meant to evoke an emotional religious response to the image of Mary clutching a dying or already dead Jesus that brought people closer to God. The power figure brought a sort of spiritual power for its users. Another piece that can be compared to the power figure is the transformation mask. It originates from northwestern Canada and is from a roughly similar time period, the late 1800s. Both pieces are also from the people who are native to their region. It is made of wood, just like the power figure, and was used in ritual dances. Both pieces had a spiritual function as well, and were interactive. While the power figure had its users drive spikes into it, the transformation mask opened up to reveal another human lair.